Often our journey through life leads us to believe that the circle of people around us is full of unconditional allies, but reality in its essence can be much more tiny and complex. The millennial philosophy of Buddhism, with its timeless wisdom, invites us to cultivate a closer and less attached look, encouraging us to demystify the belief that every smiling face is a safe refuge. Discernment to recognize that not all who approach have pure intentions is a form of self-protection and genuine wisdom. This video was designed to be a lighthouse that illuminates this path, presenting 4 Buddhist principles that serve as a guide to understanding that the idea of unconditional friend is often based on unreal expectation. Before we dive into this journey of self-knowledge, set aside a moment to leave your like and sign our channel so that our wisdom search engines can continue to grow. 1. The myth of the absolute friend. In our imagination, the word friend often evokes the image of someone who is always present, regardless of circumstances. However, reality shows us a spectrum of much wider relationships. Throughout our existence, we cross with people who join us for convenience, a temporary mutual interest, or simply to fill a void they feel in their own lives. This perception should not lead us to a perpetual distrust, but to a deeper understanding of human nature. Instead of depositing all emotional security in others, we are invited to strengthen trust in ourselves. Emotional independence is fertile soil, where our internal balance blooms, and it is on this soil that we avoid the disappointments that arise when our expectations are not met. True serenity is born when we stop seeking our happiness in approval or external affection. Buddhism teaches us that the most authentic force comes from within, and that much of our suffering originates from the projections we make about people. When we can see this dynamic clearly, we learn to cultivate lighter and more true ties. This does not mean that we should isolate ourselves, but that we must keep a vigilant and conscious heart. We can and must have companions of journey, share moments and build significant memories, but without attributing the responsibility to maintain our well-being. The purest relationships are those that flow naturally, without charges or dependencies. On the other hand, when a loop is born from the need to supply a fowl, it tends to run out of time, such as the water that flows between the fingers. Self-confidence is our safest shelter, a solid base that is not shaken by the opinions or attitudes of others. When we are firm on our own ground, criticism does not bring us down and compliments do not lose our perspective. Our internal stability becomes our greatest refuge. Life is a constant flow, and some people simply come in and out of our trajectory. The attempt to grab us as permanent is the right way to frustration. Understanding that each meeting has its own cycle, we accept the natural movement of existence. What is to remain will remain. What needs to follow another course will make room for the new. The freedom we have achieved when we stop putting our expectations in others is immense. It is the freedom to act according to our truth, without the fear of losing the approval of others. It is the freedom to express a no when necessary, without feeling guilty. And above all, it is the freedom to choose those who truly deserve to walk by our side. Genuine friendships are not built on the basis of interest, but rather the foundation of mutual respect and sincerity. However, these ties are rare and, precisely, must be carefully valued. When we come across someone who cares unconditionally, it is like finding a source of life in the desert. But to recognize this preciousness, we must first be complete in ourselves. Buddhism teaches us about the impermanence of everything, including the bonds we created. People can accompany us by an excerpt from the way and then follow new directions, and there is nothing wrong with that. It is just the natural flow of life. If we accept this impermanence, the pain of separation becomes softer. Looking inside is a more important task than looking out. When we know each other in depth, we can discern which connections strengthen us and which only our energy drain. This clarity allows us to make room for healthier relationships and avoid bonds that become heavy bales. The inner silence is our compass to distinguish the true friend from the one who is just passing. When we observe without haste, we capture gestures, attitudes, and intentions that words are not able to reveal. This attentive look protects us from illusory friendships and brings us closer to more sincere ties. Taking care of yourself is not an act of selfishness, but a fundamental need. It is only when we are in balance that we can offer something of value to others. Otherwise, we end up trying to fill our own voids with presences that do not belong to us. By accepting that no one is totally our friend in the most absolute sense, we do not become cold, but realistic people. We start to offer our affection without the demand for a return and receiving the affection of others as a gift, not as an obligation. In this way, we protect our hearts and walk through life with more serenity and clarity. 2. Friendship as a mirror of needs. Many of the relationships we define how friendships originate from specific needs. Sometimes it is the search for company in others for emotional support, and there are also those based on an exchange of material advantages. At first, these ties may seem authentic and deep, but over time, we realize that their support was transient. When the need that gave rise to friendship disappears, the connection often loses its strength and dissolves. This perception can be painful, especially when we believe the bond was unconditional. However, understanding this dynamic is fundamental to prevent the creation of illusions. Buddhism teaches us that any attachment to something unstable is a source of suffering. Therefore, when we recognize that certain friendships have their roots attached to needs, we are not surprised by their end. On the contrary, we accept change as a natural aspect of life. This reflection does not mean that all friendship based on a need is false. Some manage to mature and transform, remaining firm even after the initial reason has disappeared. But for this to happen, affection must transcend utility and find its place in sincerity and mutual respect. Without this, the relationship is naturally gone, like the fog at sunrise. Many people approach when they need something and move away the moment they already got what they sought. It is not necessary to judge or store grudge, as each one acts according to their own level of consciousness and growth. The most important thing is to learn not to depend on this kind of relationship to maintain our internal peace. When our emotional base is internal, absences do not have the power to disrupt us. True friendship proves precisely when there is no exchange of favors or an explicit need. It is at this point that we realize who really remains by our side, for valuing our essence and presence. Such a bond is rare and should therefore be recognized and nourished with attention and affection. Understand that many connections are temporary gives us an invaluable lightness. We stop carrying the pain of the unexpected farewells because we understand that each person has a role to be fulfilled on our journey. Some remain for many years, some for only a short time, but all contribute somehow to our development. Buddhism recalls us that nothing is permanent. Just as the seasons alternate, our ties also change. Accepting this natural flow is liberating because it prevents us from trying to retain what has already fulfilled its cycle and is ready to leave. In this way, we live more gratitude for what has been and less anxiety about what is no longer. It is also essential that we reflect on our own motivations. How many times did we get to someone because we needed something? By recognizing this dynamic in ourselves, we develop more compassion for those who act the same way. After all, we are all in a continuous learning process about what it is to love and connect genuinely. Friendships that arise from needs can be important transitional steps. They offer us support at specific times and play a clear role in our lives. However, we should not cling to its initial form, as it can transform or disappear. This flexibility is essential to maintain our emotional balance. When we stop waiting for permanence in everything, we value the present moment more intensely. A deep conversation, a gesture of affection, unexpected support. All these moments become special, even if they are not intended to last forever. This change of perspective frees us from frustration and brings us closer to serenity. Silence and careful observation are powerful tools that help us perceive the true nature of each relationship. Thus, we are able to discern the ties that truly nourish us from those who only take up space. This clarity is a gift that guides us for purer and less conditioned connections to interests or needs. Understanding that friendship is often a reflection of our needs should not make us insensitive but conscious. In this way, we live freer relationships. We accept serenity when a cycle ends and moved on with gratitude for shared time. This is the way to walk through life with less weight and more wisdom. 3. The fluidity of impermanence. Life, in essence, is a constant cycle of transformations, and our relationships are no exception to this rule. People come in and out of our lives, and even those who remain for a long time change and evolve over time. This impermanence is a natural feature of existence, but we often resist accepting it, creating unnecessary suffering. When we understand that nothing lasts forever, we live each relationship with more presence and gratitude. In Buddhist philosophy, impermanence is one of the fundamental truths. She reminds us that everything is in flow, like the current of a river that is never the same. Trying to grab us to the idea that a relationship should remain unchanged is like trying to hold the water with your hands. Inevitably, she escapes. By accepting that things change, we free ourselves from the fear of loss and pain of attachment. This acceptance is not synonymous with coldness or indifference, but of emotional maturity. When we know that a bond can end, we value the time we spend with the person more intensely. We take advantage of conversations, hugs, and even silences because we understand that every moment is unique and unrepeatable. This consciousness makes us more attentive and loving in the present. Suffering arises when we try to keep a situation alive that has already fulfilled its purpose. Sometimes we insist on preserving relationships that have already become, only for fear of change. This insistence drains our energy and prevents us from making room for new possibilities. As we let what we need to leave, we created the opportunity for new experiences and connections. There are ties that break abruptly and others that slowly undo. In both situations, it is natural to feel sadness, but it is crucial to remember that the end does not nullify the value of what was lived. Each friendship or love leaves us learning, lessons and memories that accompany us, even when physical presence is gone. Accepting impermanence also helps us deal with conflicts. Instead of feeding resentment, we realize that even the most difficult times are fleeting. This gives us calmer to face discussions and more lightness to forgive. After all, nothing is fixed, neither pain, no joy, nor people. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is the root of much of our suffering. When we can unleash the need to control the duration of relationships, we experience deep freedom. We become with someone because this is our genuine will, not for fear of losing it. It is a more free type of love that does not suffocate or require possession. By recognizing impermanence, we developed a more compassionate look at the farewells. We no longer see the end as a failure, but as a natural part of the life cycle. Each person who passes us has a role to play. Some are for a moment, some for years, but all contribute to our development. This understanding also protects us against illusions. Instead of promising eternities, we promise presence and honesty while we are together. This makes relationships more authentic because they are not based on unreal expectations, but on the sincere desire to share the now. When we accept that everything is constantly changing, we take better care of what we have. We value the kind words, the gestures of affection, and even the small attitudes of everyday life. We know that one day all this will be just a memory, and this conscience inspires us to live more intensely and love. Impermanence is not something to be feared, but to be welcomed. It is she who gives us the opportunity to grow, change, and start over. Without it, we would be trapped in the same situations forever, with no room for evolution. Recognizing this truth is taking a step towards a more serenity life. Therefore, instead of fighting the inevitable end of relationships, we can welcome you as part of our journey. With this view, we suffer less, we love more, and moved on gratefully for what it was, without carrying the weight of what it is no longer. This is one of the greatest freedoms we can achieve. 4. Ties as temporary illusions. Many of us have been taught to believe that the ties we created with people are firm and unchanging. But the truth is that they shape according to the circumstances of life. Just as the seasons alternate, our relationships become response to the moments and needs that arise. A close friend today can be just a distant memory tomorrow. This does not diminish the value of what the bond represented, but shows us that he fulfilled his role. Acceptance of this reality helps us live more lightly and less illusions. Buddhist philosophy reminds us that everything that is composed is intended to change. Ties, however deep they seem, are tissues for interactions, affinities, and situations that do not remain the same forever. When we cling to the idea that something will be eternal, we are attaching to an illusion that will at some point be undone. And this disappointment can cause us pain, but the pain is attenuated when we are already aware that nothing is fixed. The attachment to permanence leads us to unnecessary suffering. Instead of taking advantage of what we have at the moment, we care about ensuring that the bond never breaks. This anxiety prevents us from fully experiencing the presence of the other. By releasing control and accepting the natural flow of life, we come to value the now more. Ties are like delicate strands. Some are strengthened over time, while others wear out and break naturally. This does not mean that we should avoid creating new connections, but that we should face them with realism. It is perfectly possible to love without possessing and caring without requiring the relationship to remain unchanged. When we understand that ties change according to circumstances, we learn to better deal with distances and departures. Sometimes it is not a fight or a disagreement that separates people, but only the natural course of life. This understanding protects us from unnecessary resentment. Buddhism teaches us not to confuse affection with attachment. The affection is free, flows without strings. The attachment, on the other hand, tries to retain, suffocate, and prevent transformation. When we free from attachment, we are able to maintain what is true and let go of what has already fulfilled its function. This posture frees us and makes room for new meetings and experiences. Temporary ties also offer us the opportunity to cultivate gratitude. Instead of mourning the end of a relationship, we can thank the time it existed. Each connection, as soon as it has been, leaves us a lesson, a moment of joy or a teaching that we carry with us. So nothing is truly lost. When we stop waiting for permanence, disappointment decreases and surprise from what life offers us increases. People can return, ties can renew themselves or become something completely different. Life is a constant movement, and it is in this movement that resides its beauty. Learning to release is one of the greatest virtues. This does not mean being a cold or distant person, but to trust that what is to stay will remain even effortlessly, and what is not will leave, making room for new experiences. Often our suffering is greater due to resistance to change than for change in itself. By accepting that the ties are temporary illusions, we stop fighting the current and we flowed with it. This brings us more serenity and less emotional wear. The ties that resist the test of time are precious and rare, but even they become somehow. The secret is to nourish relationships without the illusion that they will always be the same. So we are prepared to welcome your transformations without fear. Understanding that ties are temporary illusions, we learn to love with more freedom and conscience. We live each connection with intensity, but without imprisoning it. Thus, when the cycle ends, we go on with a light heart and mind in peace. Throughout this journey, we exploit the principles that invite us to rethink the nature of our ties and to embrace impermanence as a fundamental truth. We understand that genuine friendship is rare and precious, and that most of our relationships are mirrors of passing needs. The pain of a disappointment can become wisdom, and difficulties reveal themselves as silent masters that illuminate the essence of those around us. And it is in this clarity that true freedom lies. By freeing ourselves from the illusion of eternal friendships, we do not become cold, but more realistic and welcoming. Our affection becomes a gift without the need for a return, and the presence of others becomes a gift we value in the present without holding on to the future. The peace we seek is not in the absence of change or the stability of ties, but in the ability to accept the constant flow of life. Living with conscience is our greatest protection. It is the wisdom of valuing every moment, of nourishing the connections that strengthen us and to let go. Serenity, those that have already fulfilled their role. At the end of the day, happiness does not depend on we have a crowd by our side, but on cultivating a complete heart in itself. When we find this inner fullness, our journey becomes lighter, more authentic, and infinitely quieter.